Despite the country's massive unemployment problem, 77% of organizations have said that they are struggling to recruit and obtain critical skills, and most of them are looking further afield. Some of the critical skills include engineers and foreign language speakers, and this is according to a critical skills survey by Expat Web. We are joined now by Expat Web Managing Director Marisa Jacobs and also by Kanakana Mudzanani, the Treasurer General of the SRC at Wits University. Over the line, we're joined by Tiego Khoza of the University of Johannesburg SRC and Jozias Mahube-Reinecke of the Pretoria University SRC. Good afternoon to you all, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, good morning to you and your viewers, Kio, and thank you so much for having us.
Marisa, let me start with you. According to this latest survey, there are 10 top skills that businesses are struggling to recruit in South Africa. Could you list those various categories for us?
Sure. So the latest survey indicates the top 10 skill shortages as engineers, ICT professionals, foreign language speakers. We're also looking at healthcare professionals, C-suite executives, senior financial executives, science professionals. It's also showed accountants in shortage. So that's roughly the top 10.
And I want to get reactions then from the various SRC members to these statistics that just speak to the skill shortages in the country. I'll start with you in studio.
Well, I think the report by Expat Web highlights quite a few points, and we have the responsibility to take them into account. Firstly, the institutions of higher learning and training are producing skills that are not demanded by the economy as it stands. Secondly to that, it seems as if corporate South Africa itself is not taking initiative to invest in avenues that will empower not only the youth but general South Africans with the adequate skills that are needed or are demanded by the economy, which is why we find ourselves in the calamity that we find ourselves in at the moment, where corporate South Africa is at the initiative of importing skills so that it is able to position itself in an economically viable possible avenue. And I think that this is a loud call to say we need to set up more avenues, we need to put up adequate measures to ensure that we invest in teaching and empowering the youth with the adequate skills that are demanded by the economy.
Tiego, from the University of Johannesburg, what's your reaction to these figures about these critical skills that the country requires but seemingly doesn't quite have available locally?
Well, good afternoon to you and your viewers. Personally, after reading the report or the summary of it, I feel like the report is somewhat on par with the status quo that is happening. I mean, even here in universities, we are the ones who are mostly exposed to it, because I think personally as an SRC, what I've noticed is that we are dealing a lot with a lot of students, and these are bright students who really do have the passion and drive, but they are schooling coming from a primary school to a secondary school and then ultimately to a tertiary level. When they reach tertiary level, they have not yet been adequately prepared to deal with the things that come into a tertiary level. So in my opinion, those numbers, they are quite correct. In my opinion, there might be even more, because in the sense that most of the universities, as Kanakana has said, they are focusing on courses or materials that are not really on demand in South Africa. But personally, the most interesting thing was the issue of experience that corporates would often want from graduates. I mean, sometimes it's quite ridiculous that, look, I've just graduated and I'm expected to have 5 or 10 years worth of experience. Where the hell am I going to get there? So I think this is where also government needs to come in with legislature and also coming with programs to try to address this matter adequately, because we are not going anywhere faster with this kind of climate in our education system.
And just I want to get you involved in the conversation. What's your perspective, especially representing students at the University of Pretoria? Do they feel that some of these critical skills that are required by the economy to actually grow the economy of the country are communicated to them as career opportunities?
Well, in all honesty, the report itself, it's shocking, because within the report they speak of the fourth industrial revolution, and in the context of South Africa, and especially with young people of South Africa, it's contradictory, because South Africa in itself is still struggling to properly end the next way to industrial revolution. So now, by wanting to prioritize jobs that are going to benefit the fourth industrial revolution without actually having developments on the grassroots level for young people, especially in South Africa, it becomes quite contradictory. And with the fields that are needed, it's obviously speaking towards the brain drain. And then that's obviously where our government needs to come in to show more support for these fields. However, we cannot be allowing these fields to have the hierarchical nature that it does have at the moment, because there are other fields within the humanities, for example, which play very important roles into the development and can play into the important role of development of this country, but it's not. So in all honesty, it's shocking that time and money was wasted to do a report on this when that money can go towards helping young people.
Well, perhaps, Marisa, if you can just speak to some of the insight that can be drawn from a report like this. I mean, we've heard from the different SRC members situations where the universities themselves are not preparing students adequately to match the demands that actually exist in the country when they finish school. And also the issue of being able to get into job spaces once you graduate and have the qualifications, the issue of experience.
Absolutely. So the survey definitely indicates that employers are not only looking for those skills, but they're looking for people who are qualified in those skills, of course, and also who have experience, so to his point. Interesting that the survey also indicates that more than 80% of those employers set succession planning and skills transfer in very high regard. And I think that is the area in which we need to place more focus. So we're seeing a lot of employers who are bringing in graduates now, and where they are enrolling them in those skills transfer opportunities, where they literally couple up a foreign skilled resource that they're bringing into the country and saying, during your tenure here, it is vital that you engage in a skills transfer program, and then to incorporate those graduates into the country. And as we're also seeing the multinationals putting in process plans where they're taking South African graduates and sending them to their offices abroad to also be able to gain the international experience, which is something we so vitally need, as South Africa is the gateway to Africa. We're seeing so many businesses expand internationally, and so beyond just any experience, they're also now looking for international experience to be able to set the business on that path. So I think it's vital that graduates get pulled in more, and there's certainly some plans in place for that, and more focus, I think, will be placed on that going forward.
And then just responding to Josiah's statement regarding the amount of money that's spent on a survey like this, and him actually viewing it as a waste of money, would you say it is a waste of money, or what benefits actually come from producing surveys of this nature?
A survey of this nature is vital. I mean, we've been running the survey for over 5 years. We use the survey to give input to government. We give input to the Department of Home Affairs, for example, to say what should be on the critical skills list, what skills are employers struggling to recruit, what foreign skills do we need to import into the country. And without a survey like that, there's no data for them to base that on. And the survey is also widely used by graduates to say, what area should I go and study in? Where am I going to be the most employable? So I think surveys like these, there aren't many of them out there, and I think it's vital. We can't without.
I want to just, gentlemen, just speak to you then about what you think are the possible solutions to the issues of brain drain in the country. How can we then assist some of the first-year students getting into the tertiary institutions who weren't adequately prepared at a high school level to better choose their careers based on what the actual demand is currently, and not on what the demand was for employment when they were starting off in grade 1?
One of the key objectives stated in the National Development Plan of the government is that as a country, the greatest investment we can ever make is investing in our people. And you look at a report published by Stats South Africa, which states that in 1994, we had 1.8 million skilled workers. In 2014, we have 3.8 million skilled workers. That means over a period of 20 years, as a country, we've only produced 2 million skilled workers. I don't think corporate South Africa working with government are making an adequate investment in ensuring that young people are skilled with the adequate resources. And I think this report is very vital because it constantly reminds us the urgent need to capacitate young people of this country. Because as it stands, there is a report by the Council on Higher Education which stipulates that we have a problem of capacity in institutions of higher learning, particularly in STEM-related fields. You go across the country in South Africa, you realize, as per your report, that there is an urgent need for medical health experts. How many medical schools do we have in the country? We have 7 medical schools. Are we making the necessary investment as a country, as per the government through higher education? I don't think so. How do we then address the capacity issue? As the VET SRC, we are already saying in our own engagements, we need to reimagine a new South Africa post-COVID times. We have now seen that we can take the online teaching and learning route post-COVID times because it addresses quite a lot of discrepancies in the higher education sector, such as capacity. When you say students are now going to be learning online, you can be rest assured that Wits University, instead of taking in 5,200 first-year students, now has the capacity to take over 17,000 students. That on its own is saying we are making the adequate investment in young people, and we can be rest assured that the skills that are demanded by the economy are going to be capacitated, and you won't have situations such as what happened obviously under Public Enterprise Minister Pravin Gordhan, who says Medupi has a crisis. To resolve the crisis, we must go fetch artisans from Thailand. So those are the discrepancies we will be able to address should we adequately increase capacity intake in institutions of higher learning.
While actually imploring the use of technology, advancing towards that 4th industrial revolution. Now, Tiego, just in 2 minutes, just talk to us about what you as the UJSRC are trying to do to also help students where you are to have the adequate skills to become relevant in growing the economy.
Well, what we feel is that, look, as SRC, we have an obligation to help students no matter what. But personally, and some of the SRC, we feel like starting to help students at a tertiary level is somewhat late. This is something that should have been done and addressed from coming basically mostly secondary level schooling. Because if I can give an example, personally, I am from what you call a former Model C school in Pretoria. But when I got to varsity, there was something called Turn It In. I did not know what was Turn It In. But the people I was in the same course at the very same time who came from private schools, they were quite exposed to Turn It In, and they were quite aware on how it works. So this is something that needs to be prepared coming from a secondary school. Also going back on an infrastructure level, has there been adequate infrastructure that has been deployed in schools so that students can make best of that infrastructure? I mean, we cannot speak about 4th industrial revolution education, whilst in some of our schools they don't have decent access to sanitation. So it all also goes about getting our house in order first before setting our priorities right. That is my opinion.
And Jozias, so just as the SRC of the University of Pretoria, what solutions are you proposing and what plans have you already begun to roll out?
Well, one thing is that there needs to be more focus on, instead of wanting to stop the brain drain from emerging, there needs to be also more effort being put towards growing and developing the knowledge that's already here for, degrees that are not falling under this bogus status, what thing that was released. Because, I mean, over 5 years, you're producing a thing like this when there could have been a lot more things to have been done with that, because that data in itself is based within capitalism and imperial belief. But then that's another thing. In terms of within the university, what needs to be done is there needs to be better entrepreneurship programs and sponsorship programs with donors who have the ability and the capability to take in graduates in the university under their wing and give them the platform and that experience which is needed. Because as much skills as can be developed, then comes the issue of experience. So that's why another thing is that there's these things of vice chancellors being paid so much money throughout the country in institutions. That money can also be directed towards helping fund small businesses within the student community, because that's the only way that we can really save this post-COVID situation that we're in right now, is small businesses to help, especially from the youth. So that's what we're busy generating in the SRC, is to help promote small businesses within the student community, as well as working with sponsors to help with business initiatives as well for the students at the university.
Now, Marisa, just in closing, with all the advice that the different SRC members have actually mentioned, do you think that this is enough to keep South Africa globally competitive when it comes to not only producing the critical skills, employable people with critical skills, but also retaining them and avoiding brain drain?
I think it's such a topical item at the moment is how do we retain skills? How do we encourage graduates after they finish to remain in the country and deploy those skills locally? And I think South Africa needs to, there's definitely more focus on that at the moment, both from an attraction perspective, so attracting foreign talent to come into the country, as well as attracting some of the South African talent that has left the country to try and attract them back to South Africa, bring the experience that you've gained globally and bring it back into the country. So it's a massive focus area.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us for this discussion this afternoon. In studio, I had Marisa Jacobs, who is the Director of Expat Web, as well as Kanakana, Mudzanani, Treasurer General of the Wits University SRC. Over the line, we were joined by Tiego, Khoza, UJ's SRC Marketing Projects and Development Officer, and Jozias Mahube-Reinecke, University of Pretoria SRC Treasurer via Zoom.